welcome to the Scotland at 7 here on Broadcasting Scotland. I'm Kenny McBride, and I'm joined here by other Scotland at 7 regular host, Gordon Ross, as well as Day Tucker and Chris McCusker. How are we all this evening?
I'm fine, I'm slightly late. I'm sorry about that.
A happy Christmas to everyone, by the way.
Oh, indeed, yes. We are back together, the same group we had last week, and we're going to just, the same thing we did last week, go through the second half of the year this time, month by month, talk about some of the big stories, give you a wee review of what we've been through this year. So we start in July, and in July, record high drug deaths were reported in Scotland, with 1,187 people in Scotland dying of drug-related causes in the previous year. This would become an attack point against the Scottish Government, while the Scottish Government and others pleaded with the UK Government to allow safe consumption sites and effective decriminalisation in Scotland. In the US, Donald Trump was censured by the House of Representatives for racist language used towards the four congresswomen known as the Squad. Meanwhile, the largest and most diverse field of candidates in history debated in the first set of Democratic primary debates. 20 candidates participated over 2 nights. The month ended with the resignation of Theresa May and the installation of Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. Influential Scottish Tory leader Ruth Davidson had run Operation Arse in an effort to prevent this outcome, and she'd given the kiss of death to several candidates who were subsequently eliminated at the next round of voting. The 13 MPs on Ruth's team at Westminster almost all defied Davison to back Johnson. And in a story very close to the hearts of us all here at Broadcasting Scotland, Lisanne Zietsman was forced to leave her home, her husband and her business on Arran and return to a country she's barely lived in as a result of strict Home Office requirements on wealth for spousal visas. Thankfully, she has since been able to return. And finally, the world marked the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 mission, which carried the first humans to the moon. So, Gordon, first of all, what jumps out at you there?
Well, there's a lot of stuff there that jumps out at me, but this report about the deaths in Scotland through drugs is a little misleading, because the drug deaths and the statistics can be attributed not just to people taking overdoses, but also anyone who was tested for drugs following a car accident, or anyone who might have died from an overdose of prescribed medications. So I think the statistics can be a bit misleading, although it is a crisis.
Well, myself and Dave were talking off camera about that, and it's one of the anomalies that's yet to be rectified within Scotland, and unfortunately we allow the Westminster Government and the right-wing media to batter Scotland over the head with this overblown proportion, because it's not a true proportion of the actual drug deaths in Scotland. You know, if you're driving your car and you're taking a prescribed drug for a heart condition,
and if you die in a car accident and they test your blood,
it's not a car accident, it's a drug accident.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you know, the figures are skewed out of all proportion.
Yes.
And the right-wing media love to use this as a big nasty club to hit the Scottish Government over the head with.
Well, I have looked ahead a wee bit in the script here, so I know there is a difference in how the stats are calculated in England. So it does mean that when we get the comparison in the news, you know, why is it so much higher in Scotland? Well, it's because we count more different types of death. It's not just overdoses. So yeah, there is an issue, but obviously, I mean, it's still higher than it's ever been, which is still, I think, says to us that there's more we need to do.
Is that not because of the cohort, this older cohort of drugs users who are dying
in larger numbers
because of other illnesses that exacerbate the drug use plus whatever other illnesses they've got?
Yeah, but you know, notwithstanding, and everything that you're saying there is, you know, 100% correct. But if the drugs policy was devolved to Scotland, then we could take a more nuanced approach to the way that we actually deal drug death,
Right.
Yeah.
the way that we record drug death, and how we can possibly take a holistic approach
Right.
to actually treating people who
May-
are on long-term
Do
drugs.
you think perhaps there is scope for classification of drug deaths so that we can have a classification of overdose death? We could have a classification
Correct.
of accidental death,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
prescription
Yeah,
drug
because, I
accidental
mean,
death,
you know,
or
I mean-
suicide for that matter.
Yeah, because so long Scotland has been labelled the sick man of Europe.
Yeah.
And you know, quite frankly, it's getting a bit tedious now. You know, I mean, when I was a young guy, the word "jakey" was really only attributed to sort of like alcoholics and down
Yeah.
and outs.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Now the word "jakey" is used pretty much every day for somebody just being out their skull on whatever.
Yeah.
You know, so it is high time that Scotland shakes off this narrative of being the drug capital of Europe. You know, it's not correct.
So in this other news, Theresa May finally stepped down after a wildly successful couple of years as Prime Minister. And we got Boris Johnson as a replacement.
Something that was said that would never happen.
Yeah, we were of course promised that. I remember as I was compiling this script earlier, I did notice we had talked on the show about how Blair McDougall had promised, oh no, Boris Johnson will never be Prime Minister, nothing to worry about voting no, because that's never going to happen. And like so many other things that the pro-independence side in 2014, of course it came true. Of course it did. So yeah, I mean, and I think, I mean, we were slightly sarcastic there about Ruth
Slightly?
Davidson, but I mean, it is significant, I think, that she had no influence whatsoever on the process. Every candidate she endorsed lost at the next round of...
I can't help wondering if her calling it Operation Arse was prescient. I mean, because she did make such an arse of it, in all honesty. Because, as you say, nobody went with Ruth Davidson. Everybody went with Boris Johnson.
In fairness, I think Mundell did. I think
David
Mundell
Mundell?
stuck with her.
And look what happened to Mr. Mundell.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
He's
well,
now
yeah,
out of
exactly.
a job.
He was pretty much put out on his arse by Boris Johnson.
Replaced
Sorry,
by
but
Alistair
we're
Jack
just
now.
continuing the arse theme going on here. But you know, it's well to see that I have labelled the said 13 poodles as 13 poodles. They were 13 Tory poodles, not Scottish Tory poodles.
Yes.
And even
They were
Ruth
loyal
Davidson
to the
now
Tory
remains.
government in Westminster. They had absolutely no regard for Scotland whatsoever. And it was shown, funnily enough, in my own constituency, where a certain Mr. Masterton was overheard at the count by saying, pretty much like the villain in Scooby-Doo, damn it, I would have got away with it had it not been for those folk in Netherley. You know, and it's
Oh,
so
God bless the folk in Netherlands.
disregard for the constituency.
Yeah.
And utter shocking.
And reward for their loyalty came there none.
Came there, no, there absolutely didn't. And thankfully it was replicated, you know, in many other constituencies. Unfortunately, not them all. But hey, I think we already discussed that we were never going to lose the belly of the borders, were we? We were
No.
always going to
Well,
keep
no,
those
there's
three,
always
you
there's
know.
always been a blue band across
Yeah,
that
aye,
area
aye.
to protect it.
Aye. It's
Well, we did get them for a bit in
Yep.
in 2015, but yeah, since then the Tories have recovered quite a lot in the.
I think
in the south
I
of
think it's become a virtual blue wall across the country. That's what they're aiming for, to try and keep those constituencies Tory all the way across from one side to the other.
it's honestly
It's
an
figurative.
anachronism.
It's just something in their imagination. They can't fool the idea of there being a gap in the Tory wall between England
It
and Scotland.
justifies logic. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, Dave, you must know. You know the sort of farming community
Yes.
there. You know, I mean, I don't know, you know, about you, but as soon as I see a green Barber jacket, I just want to run a mile. You know what I mean? Because they tend all to, you know, have faces like City Baker's Helene cakes, and you know.
That's a good description, actually, of a lot of farmers. I know.
Yeah, you know, they'll drive their blasted Land Rovers that are about 40-year-old and are
Yeah.
still running.
Yeah.
No, I do recall attending a meeting for the Environment Committee with National Farmers Union, and as a committee we gathered at this beautiful farm up past the Hunt Kennels, Jed Forest Hunt Kennels, I presume. And we had our meeting and we had a most delicious lunch and tea stuff. It was gorgeous. And the owner of the farm, who's a lovely man, and he turned to somebody and said, well, he said, see that piece of ground down there? He said, that's where I'm moving to if we get independence in Scotland. And I thought,
that bit of ground down there.
yes.
Where was
I mean,
that?
he's talking about hundreds of acres of prime border land.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, he's a really good farmer. Beautiful cattle, and he grows barley at a terrific height up on the hills. Very skillful, but there was no changing that man's mind.
Yeah.
No, I think a lot of farmers, though, are traditional conservatives with a smaller c.
Yes.
They are unionists, but only because they value that conservatism with the small c.
Yes,
And
yes.
they can't believe anything else would possibly work for them.
But there are quite a lot that are, you know, sitting on the fence and not 100% sure. I remember during 2014 when we had a big panel discussion at the UA Market in Stirling. And what is it called when you go out the door and they gauge what people are thinking?
An exit poll.
An exit poll. And I mean, all these farmers were very against independence and all the rest, but the exit poll actually had independence winning.
Did it?
By the time
That's very interesting.
all the facts were put to them, and in fact, I think the First Minister may have attended that one. But
Was this when Alex Salmond was? It was
Yes.
this at the first referendum. Yep.
yes, it was.
Oh, no, I do remember that, and yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I do remember that though. That was interesting.
But I tell you what I think has changed an awful lot away, and that is the intensity subsequently of the land reform discussion. That scared an awful lot of rural voters, farmers, just generally rural voters. And I think this is where, you know, I know you're on the left, Chris.
Thank you for underlining that day. It's a source of comedy in broadcasting Scotland.
But I do think we have to be awfully careful about, you know, how we put out things, because land reform is essential. There's no doubt about it. But the way we go about it has to appeal to a broad
It has to include
audience.
the farming community, and it has
And
to
it
get
has
them
to.
involved in
And it
protecting
mustn't
the
scare
land.
them.
Well,
Yes.
they actually do want to protect the land. That's the bizarre thing
Yes.
about it.
Yeah.
But at the moment, the forms of farming that we're using don't really take that into account very much.
No.
But
that's
see,
right.
if the SNP were to go as far cutting as what the Greens would want, yeah, you would possibly see that rising.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
You know, the SNP are taking a softly approach to
They are.
the land reform, and the Greens are not happy with it in you know any such way, shape or form.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you know, I mean, although I'm you know all for the redistribution of wealth and whatnot and what have you, but there was a time where you know people actually lived on the land and you know lived at the behest of the landowner
Yes. Yes.
and actually worked the land.
The tenant
And-
farmers.
Aye,
Yes.
They're
so
tenant crofters.
you know, but I mean, tenant farmers are few and far between now.
Yep.
You know, I mean, I remember when I was a boy, you used to go out to
They're not.
one of the farms.
There are still some.
No.
No?
The
Not-
majority of members in National Farmers Union are
Are
tenants.
all tenants.
That's
Ah.
interesting.
Yes.
That's
But it's
interesting.
a bit like
That's- I mean,
religion.
that's part of
You
why
don't
we need
talk
land reform.
when you come together. You don't say, "Are you a tenant farmer?" Just the same as you wouldn't say, "Are you Protestant or Catholic?" It's you just don't do it.
Depends where you are in Glasgow, right?
Right enough.
Yeah.
Aye.
Well, listen, I think it's my turn now.
Yes,
at
we'll
this
need to
point.
do a whole programme on this later.
On farming.
Oh,
Yes,
very
we'll
much.
do
Yeah.
we'll do a
Yeah.
farming
Yeah.
special
Yeah.
at some point later in the year. Well, that brings us to August last year, this year, last August, I should say. And the University of Glasgow announced a partnership with the University of the West Indies to begin a process of reparation for the enormous donations made to Glasgow University from money made in the slave trade. The partnership will work on research, scholarships and more in efforts to better understand our history and to repair as much as possible the damage done. The Greens re-elected Patrick Harvey under a new title of co-leader, while Lorna Slater replaced Maggie Chapman as the non-male co-leader. Leaked Operation Yellowhammer documents showed that the UK government was much more worried about a no-deal Brexit than they let on to the public. But new Prime Minister Boris Johnson continued to steer the UK towards that very outcome. Ferguson's, the last civilian shipyard on the Clyde, was taken into public ownership by the Scottish Government after delays and cost overruns nearly halted production of 2 new CalMac ferries and forced the yard into administration for the second time in 5 years. In the United States, a white supremacist killed 20 and injured 26 in a mass shooting in El Paso, Texas, in response to what he called the Hispanic invasion of Texas. Many began to use the term stochastic terrorism, blaming such supposed lone wolf attacks on the racist messaging of the president and his right-wing media allies, especially online. Meanwhile, in the UK, Owen Jones told of what he believed was a premeditated assault outside a pub. He too thought that increasingly violent language from politicians had played a role. Also in the US, prolific paedophile and alleged pimp to the stars Jeffrey Epstein died in his prison cell while he was awaiting trial for further offences. Epstein was known to be very close to high-profile figures including Donald Trump, Bill Clinton and, of course, Prince Andrew. The record drug deaths were reported in England and Wales, suggesting that Scotland's July announcement may have been part of a wider trend. Barely a murmur of protest was heard in the press about the UK government's failures in this area, raising ongoing questions about the relative competence of Scotland's 2 governments and the disparities of media coverage. So, where shall we start with this one, Kenny?
It's quite a month.
It says a lot has happened in that month.
I mean, the one that really jumps out to me is this. The way we started talking about the language that politicians use and how dangerous it can be, particularly in the States. I mean, obviously, anything that's seen to be encouraging mass shootings is worse than Owen Jones getting beaten up outside a pub, as bad as that is. But I think something we've seen over the last couple of years, things like the enemies of the people from the Daily Mail.
Making traitors. Judges were enemies of the people, wasn't it?
Calling MPs traitors and, anti-British and all these kind of things, which, I'm sure there's a number of us here at the table who wouldn't necessarily mind being called anti-British, but for say a Labour MP in London, that's not something they can afford to be.
They can't take that lightly.
Yeah.
No, they can't
And I think we've increasingly just seen this ramping up of rhetoric.
Yeah, and a plummeting in standards in Parliament.
There's also been a massive increase in knife crime, particularly in England, where the level of hate crime has skyrocketed as well. Not only is it abuse and threats, it's now cascading out into actual violence involving knives.
Yeah,
in America they have guns, so they go and have mass shootings when they get aggrieved. Here, people go on basically a knifing frenzy instead.
Yeah, because thankfully guns aren't as readily available in Britain as what they are in America.
Though Nigel Farage wanted to reverse that.
Nigel Farage wanted to reverse that, but Nigel Farage basically got what he asked for. And what he was asking for the last 8 years is pretty much what Enoch Powell was asking for back in 72, 73.
Keep them out, basically.
He wanted to basically, build up this wall of racism within
this
England.
Hostile environment, the way the Tories actually describe it, and it is exactly that.
Now it's called a modern day hostile environment. Back then, and I don't want to be controversial, but it takes you back to the days of people like Alf Garnett and all of this, but that kind of language was absolutely, totally
normal and accepted.
and it is just not.
Yeah. But
It's
didn't
just
it quickly
not.
become unacceptable?
Yeah, well, there's a great Stuart Lee gag about how the political correctness, people criticise political correctness and blah blah blah, but he said the one thing it's done is made the Tories couch their viciously racist policies in slightly more polite language. And I think, that kind of speaks to what you're saying. Is, the Enoch Powell would be quite at home in today's Tory
Yes.
party, whereas
Yes.
I think if you'd said that 5 years ago, people might have thought, oh, I don't know. I think
Yeah,
you
I
see,
agree.
The thing with Enoch Powell and why an awful lot of Tories actually do revere him. I mean, I heard one absolute rabid Tory earlier on. I was watching a video. I can't remember who this guy was. Some historian. And he was likening the Scot Nats.
Was it Mr.
to
Sharkey? I
Nazis.
think his name was.
Starkey.
Oh, yes.
Starkey.
Yeah. He was likening the Scots to the Scot Nats to Nazis, right? Which I found deeply offensive.
Yes.
I'd
It is offensive, yeah.
I only unearthed this.
Yeah.
Apparently, it was said in 2015
Yeah.
or something like that. And when you've got people in respected positions of society that can air those kind of views
Without being...
without being
Without being
challenged
challenged.
in
Yep.
any shape or manner or form.
Yes.
I find it absolutely horrendous.
I think it's...
And actually, sorry to cut you off there, Kenny, but going back to the first item that we were going to discuss there, is that I've done an awful lot of work with my comrade Graham Campbell in the Flag Up Scotland Jamaica project, along with Sir Geoffrey Palmer, the lecturer who has traversed the world and trying to get people to understand what actually happened within the slave trade.
Yes.
And this is absolutely brilliant. at
Absolutely.
Glasgow
Well,
University.
one thing that most people didn't understand was that the slave trade, for every slave who went to the United States, 10 went to Jamaica.
Yeah.
10.
Yeah.
So that Britain had a far larger slave
Oh, yeah.
ownership than almost any other country, including, Scotland made its money,
Yeah.
Glasgow made its money largely from tobacco and largely from tobacco plantations in America, usually Virginia.
Yeah.
So it does owe a great deal
Yeah, but
of its wealth
it
to those slaves.
wasn't just tobacco that.
Well, that was- I'm just taking that as an example, but it was one
I'm
example.
not being
Sugar and
any such
sugarcane,
picky.
yep.
Cotton.
There was sugar and there was cotton. There is that massive big boat
There's
in
also
the Clyde
tea,
estuary,
coffee and rubber
which
as
is-
well.
Which
Oh,
is,
yes,
which is known as the sugar boat. Where its hull is,
That's
clearly visible. But again, touching on what we were talking about land reform, it was the wealthy landowners who were able to dabble in the British Empire's exploitation of slaves.
But I don't think it was just the big wealthy landowners.
No, it's not just. I'm
When you
not
look at the
singling them
lists
out.
of people who were given compensation when the slave trade ended,
Oh yeah.
there was ordinary
The slave
people.
owners were compensated, weren't they?
Yes.
For the loss
Yeah.
of their slaves.
Correct,
Not the
correct.
slaves
Well,
themselves.
I forget his name now. A very, very famous Scottish actor who he done a two-part. No, it was a four-part series.
Yes,
It was commissioned by the BBC.
that's right.
And he had highlighted that individual slave owners were getting, and it was written down and priced. Just for argument's sake, Charlie, 6'2", scars on his thing, £3 or 3 guineas,
Yeah.
whatever, and
What it
stuff
was
like
worth.
that. It's horrendous.
Well,
Do you know, but then again, we've got these manuscripts to highlight
Yes.
as evidence
Yes.
to people, and I just need to reiterate, it's to the credit of the university for actually standing up and saying,
Yep. Somebody has started.
No, it is not a monetary value.
No,
Yeah.
but
There
somebody
can
saying
never be a monetary value in today's society compared to that. It would be astronomical. It would break a country.
Yeah.
But to make reparation in an educational
Yes,
way,
yes.
educatory way.
And
That's
just
how
on
I
that
would
note,
say it.
I hosted the show where we had Graham Campbell in to talk about this. He's obviously been a big part of this
Yep.
whole campaign with Glasgow Uni, and I strongly recommend that everyone watching go back and watch it. If you didn't
Yep.
see it at the
I
time,
did.
it's just to get yourself an education. It was a huge education for me, and one of the best conversations I've had since I've started doing this show. It's well worth going back and having a look at that. So from August, I think it was the maybe the second week in August, but well worth having a look at.
Well, let's move along now to the second part of the August batch of things that happened. The death of Jeffrey Epstein in his jail cell, allegedly a suicide.
Allegedly.
But nobody has really delved too deeply into it to figure out whether
I don't think anybody
he stabbed
really
himself
believes-
repeatedly,
Yeah, I
or
think
whether he
one of those
hung
suicides
himself.
with the two
Slipped in a bar of soap.
One of those suicides with
Allegedly.
two gunshots to the back of the head, you know.
Could be.
It seems so suspicious that the tapes disappeared.
Well, it does make you wonder what he was about to reveal.
all these things, yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, he was very, very well connected,
we-
and a lot of people, I think, will be grateful that he didn't have to air anything in court.
Well, Prince Andrew, as we all know, went on air in a live television interview, which lasted about, what was it, an hour, I think it was.
Very
And it was
ill-fated.
actually painful to watch him
very
trying to
ill-fated.
evade every question and
Yeah.
thinking about what he was going to say to excuse his behaviour. It struck me that if Prince Andrew was involved, and we also know that Donald Trump and Bill Clinton were
Yes.
friends of Mr. Epstein as well, it reminded me somewhat of the Jimmy Savile case, because paedophiles who appear to be as powerful as this surround themselves with powerful friends
Yeah.
and bring them into their circle.
Yeah.
And it seems that Prince Andrew was brought right into the circle. Maybe he didn't suspect, maybe he thought it was a bit peculiar, but he wasn't saying no to any of it, it seemed. He was apparently
And I mean, he
being
met-
entertained, as he thought.
He met Epstein even after he had already been to jail.
And he knew
because
what he was.
He'd been to jail, got a very light sentence for various rather dodgy reasons. And then after he got out of jail, Prince Andrew went and met him again. I mean,
Stayed over
If-
with more women
if
at
he's-
his apartment as
if
well.
if Prince Andrew isn't guilty of any criminal offences, he is guilty of incredible stupidity.
Well,
Incredible stupidity.
Turning a blind eye to what must have been obvious to anybody
But then,
else.
you know, it's not exactly unusual in that family. I mean,
No, I think
Charles
used
was
to people
close friends with
bowing and
Savile,
scraping.
and which you would assume Savile had been vetted by MI6.
Well,
You
I,
would assume,
to get
wouldn't
that
you?
close to the royal family and the Prime Minister.
I want to hold my hand up. I was absolutely bored yesterday. There was nothing that I wanted to watch on television. I don't have a BBC licence, but I found on Netflix the Queen,
Oh, yes.
and
That's
I-
been on television, actually.
I haven't seen it, but I thought I'll sit and watch this. And
Was
I
this
found
the
it
drama-
fascinating.
the drama about
yeah,
Queen? Yeah.
I found it fascinating because it started all with the death of Princess Diana,
Yes.
Yeah.
who was the only royal that I had any time for, being, you know,
A Republican socialist.
committed Republican socialist, total anti-royalist. But yeah, Diana was the only one that I really had any time for. And some of the, you know, the cleverly written in remarks,
Yes.
I found were really, really quite comical.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, it was the chap that was playing Tony Blair.
Oh, yeah.
done-
He was
done
actually
quite
surprisingly good.
actually.
He was good,
He did
yeah.
quite well. But, you know, and his advisor,
Where do they get these
saying-
people?
you know, so are we just putting it down to a car accident? And thinking
Yeah.
his advisor went, well, you could ask a family.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
I mean, things like that.
Yeah, there's little-
You know, but what I was really saying was back in the sort of the hedonistic days of the 80s, where sort of like promiscuity blossomed with this sort of like new revolution of music and culture and all the rest of it.
Oh, the Cool Britannia phase.
The Cool Britannia, which was born under Tony Blair.
Of course, he invented the term.
You know, there was, you only had to watch Top of the Pops and just, you know, view the presenters and go like, that guy's a bit too close to that young girl. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, we're talking about people like Tony Blackburn and all these household names.
Yes.
So, you know, what Kenny's saying is, you know, 100% correct. You know, what Epstein knew, an awful lot of people are quite happy that he took to his grave.
Well, the other thing about Epstein is it's almost inevitable that he has other friends in his circle.
Absolutely.
Who were also paedophiles, who may still be.
Aye.
And
You remember it was 10 years after Cyril Smith died that, you know,
Yeah.
It all started to come
real
out.
story started to come out about him.
I should just make clear that Tony Blackburn was completely exonerated. Tony Blackburn
And Cliff.
has
You're
never been
always
found
having to
guilty of
defend
anything.
us.
Just to make
Cliff.
clear, I know you didn't actually make an accusation there, but I just
Wouldn't make
want,
none of, dear,
want to make clear.
dear Tony, I've listened to him many a time.
Of all the things this station needs, a libel lawsuit is not one of them.
No.
So anyway, moving on to September now. Boris Johnson, the new Prime Minister, had a big month, losing the first 6 votes he called in Parliament as a Prime Minister. A new record, breaking his own previous records of 3 votes, 4 votes and 5 votes. He then had his attempt to prorogue Parliament nullified by the Inner House of the Court of Session in Edinburgh. A path to resolution of the Brexit mess still seemed almost impossible. The SNP called for a vote of confidence but were rebuffed by the Labour Party, and only the SNP suggested that maybe a constitution of conventions, traditions and gentlemen's agreements wasn't very useful with a fundamentally dishonest Prime Minister like Johnson. Problems with the construction of the new Children's Hospital in Edinburgh hit the headlines, beginning a story that would dog Health Minister Jean Freeman for the rest of the year. Another mass shooting rocked the US, prompting significant discussion about gun reform, especially among the Democrats competing to face Trump in 2020. It remains unclear what will be possible without major changes in the Senate, where Mitch McConnell has shut down almost all legislation proposed and passed by Democrats in the House. Scotland's most successful Tory leader since the time of Thatcher, Ruth Davidson, stood down from her leadership role to spend more time with her son Finn, and the world marked the 80th anniversary of Nazi troops invading Poland. So, what jumps out at you from September?
Ooh.
There's
Tricky
a lot
one,
in
that.
there. There is a lot in there. It's got to be, obviously, for me, Boris losing a successive amount of votes, which all gave us hope that his tenure wasn't
Limited.
going
It
to
was
last.
much more shaky than he imagined.
Yeah. And then, you know, as we roll on it in November, we see somebody went and got a massive big hammer drill and put his nail firmly in place. But I mean, that was, as an avid watcher of the Parliament channel,
BBC Parliament.
provided by Broadcasting Scotland, I should say.
Oh, right.
Broadcasting Scotland offer the BBC Parliament during the day as well. So there's one for you.
Coverage of Parliament.
Yeah, coverage of
Very
Parliament.
Yeah, who
So-
not BBC Parliament.
No, coverage of Parliament. You can tune in that way and you can keep an eye on what's going on with them.
Yes.
And it made for compulsive viewing, I thought.
Yeah.
You had some great speeches, obviously by Ian Blackford, a couple of crackers from Pete Wishart. One of my all-time favourites was Mary Black,
Yes.
when she found a whole load of stuff in the library about, you know, Tory rules and Tory traditions and all the rest of it. And she-
Parliamentary traditions,
Aye,
which are
aye,
just
aye.
comical.
Aye. So I mean, she told them a new strip throughout that speech. So, but there was other ones as well. There was David Lammy as well stood up, and I've never seen so much anger in one man. And you know, a long time, you know, and I've watched Nye Bevan and stuff like that. But David Lammy was absolutely brilliant as well. You know, that was on the knife reforms and stuff like that and all the rest of it.
Well, the other thing that struck me about that month was the the attempt to prorogue Parliament for 5 weeks, and the fact that it was a Scottish action which stopped it.
Yes.
But not only stopped it, but first of all used Scots law to stop it, and then referred to the English Supreme Court to have that ratified. And of course, the English Supreme Court could do nothing else but ratify it because it was originally lodged in Scots law. Any appeal would have had to have used Scots law as well. And I don't think they were in the mood for that. And the fact that it was so glaringly obvious to virtually everybody that this prorogation was fake, and he was wasting time, and he was trying basically to get all the MPs out of the way and prevent them from stopping him doing what he wanted to do. The courts realised this and stopped it, which I think gives a little bit more confidence in both judiciaries in Scotland and in England in this case.
Yeah, absolutely.
That they can still separate politics from law and hold politicians to account. In this case,
for
the Prime
how
Minister.
long?
I've never heard of a Prime Minister being...
But you know what he's about to do now.
Of course.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's one of the points, is that he is now talking about making judges a more of a political appointment than a...
Following the American way.
Well, here we go. It's the copying of the American way all over again.
But that was all. You know, we couldn't have achieved that without our wonderful Joanna Cherry.
Yes.
Indeed. Or Joe Mullen.
Joe Mullen as well. The two of them were pivotal in their knowledge in that field was absolutely second
But
to none.
the other important thing about that court case was it established the supremacy of Scots law, and its equality with English law, which is something which I think Scotland is going to be very glad of in the next 2 or 3 years.
Well, I mean, I hope so. The fear that I have, the kind of pessimistic side of me, says that it'll be used by unionists to show that actually Scotland is absolutely respected and valuable within the UK because a Scottish court was able to overturn
an English decision.
A decision by the British Prime Minister.
Don't be giving them any. Kenny, you know.
And they'll hold it up as saying the system works.
That's. I mean, I think almost whatever happens, their answer will be, well, see, this is great. This is the best of all possible worlds.
Just means the judiciary caught them at it.
But I mean, I think Dave
Right-handed.
makes a very good point, though, that if Johnson is able to make this more of a political process, appointing judges, I think that does take us down quite a dangerous road.
That I think will be very difficult for him to do because the judiciary will fight it tooth and claw.
Well, that's true, but I mean, he's got a big
the
majority in Parliament now, and it's
True.
and a very, very little, very weak opposition in Parliament.
And a lot of yes men in his
And his side.
government.
Well, I remember one episode that I was guesting on for you, Kenny, was we discussed the likeness between Boris Johnson and Donald Trump, and basically it's teacher and tutor.
Yeah, he's being mentored by
You know
Trump.
what I mean, and it's he can see Trump getting away with absolute blue murder, then he will try and get away with blue murder himself in order to fashion himself in his likeness.
Yes. But above both of them is a puppet.
Oh yeah.
Puppeteer, I should say,
Yeah.
who is manipulating them, and probably it's the puppeteer that's mentoring them.
Go on, name him, Dave. Name him. Go. God will do it.
Before we move on to October, before we move on to October, I do just want to mention the phenomenal career of Ruth Davidson, which
Meteoric.
her time as leader
Fell straight out of the clouds, down to earth.
I was going to say her time as Tory leader came to an end in September. What is her legacy in Scottish politics?
A lot of people playing tiny violins.
For me,
perhaps.
I feel so strongly about this. I think her legacy has been to revive the nastiness of unionism, Irish style.
Dog whistle unionism.
Dog whistle unionism and
Involving
giving
the Orange
credibility to the Orange Order.
Indeed.
Yeah, I mean, I think-
I just think it's absolutely shocking.
Well,
Now,
I think a lot of that no surrender messaging
Yes.
that she
But
pushed
you
out
know
was
that
a
we-
real dog
yeah.
whistle. In,
Yes.
the genuine sense of that word, it was, you know what we mean.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know what we mean when we say no surrender to the SNP.
that's right. Yes.
And I think that was a
Thinly,
very, very
thinly
dark
veiled.
thing to
Yeah,
bring into
it still is because.
Scottish politics.
I mean,
But you can tell now that the Tories in Scotland know that they've lost because they're having to resort to these low tactics of trying to trying to invoke sectarianism as a last line of defence.
right.
Yeah, but then that was fantastically done as well by what's his name? Your wee wee Scottish MP sitting in an English constituency. Where's that? bugger
Costa?
from? No. He's his name escapes me. I can picture him.
Is he a Labour politician?
He's from no, he's Tory. He's from East Kilbride or something like that. He's a despicable wee swine, and he actually, stood at that dispatch box and said that the SNP were dealing in sectarian values.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. I can't remember his name either.
Johnson jumped on that as well.
Oh yeah, they
Yes.
love it.
And they carry it on when they refer to the Scottish National Party as the Scottish Nationalist
Well, they love
Party.
nothing
Yes.
better than equating Scotland to Northern Ireland because the enemy can be painted as terrorists or insurgents of some kind.
Well, yeah, more so insurgents than obviously terrorists.
Well,
Thankfully, it
indeed.
hasn't got to those heights. But I don't think that even as much as you could try and cheapen Ruth Davidson's legacy,
Yeah.
there is no legacy,
No.
handed
No.
down to Scotland, because at the end of the day, the Tories do not work for Scotland. Although they say it time and time again, they definitely do not.
No.
But the thing is, Ruth Davidson's legacy is Jackson bloody Carlow.
Who's not
That-
even?
that's
who's
not a
even-
legacy.
Who's not even?
That's a curse.
Who's not an elected leader?
No.
He is still.
He's the
acting-
interim acting leader.
Well, acting I think is a lot.
Well,
better.
we-
than-
Listen,
Just very quickly then, on pick a name. Who will be the next Scottish Tory leader?
What
Who's
do you
left?
Chris,
which
do you have
one
any
were you going
ideas?
to say?
I would probably say it will be Jackson Carlaw, but don't be surprised if Adam Tompkins throws his.
I think
Oh,
it'll be
no.
Tompkins.
Oh.
I put my money on it.
Well, I'm going for Annie Wells.
Oh well.
Oh,
Oh.
We'll have a
I think-
sweepstake
I thi-
after
I
the
think
show.
they've-
An outside runner.
I think they've got a taste for a woman.
women.
I think Annie Wells, that kind of working
That's why I
class,
suggested
working class
Jackson Carlaw.
Glaswegian. I think they think that might
That might sell well.
sell well.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, listen,
let's move
I'm
on.
going to move on from Tories to the closely linked subject of corporal punishment of smacking people, much as we'd like to do that to some politicians. Anyway, the Equal Protection from Assault Bill ended the reasonable chastisement defence used by parents who smack children. This effectively made smacking illegal in Scotland. Now, the WASPy women, the women who lost 6 years of their pensions when the British government basically precipitously chopped off 6 years of their pensions and moved the goalpost 6 years further away, have lost their court appeal for compensation, leaving many at a loss regarding their financial futures. A great shame, so many thousands of women were affected by this. Pro-democracy demonstrations around the world, from Chile to Catalonia, and especially in Hong Kong, were met with increasingly violent responses from authoritarian governments. However, other protests, such as those in Lebanon, managed to remain peaceful, which seems somehow or other to be the wrong way around, to my mind. But anyway, record numbers of marchers joined the All Under One Banner March in Edinburgh. Despite miserable weather, as many as 100,000 people were thought to have participated. Now, I'm pretty certain we all know what jumps out from this month. I mean, apart from the smacking being stopped.
it's-
How many people still smack their children, do you think? I can't think there's that many
No.
who still do it.
I don't even think I'd raise my hand to my children at all.
No.
I have to say my children never gave me cause to.
It
Yes.
seemed to pass without a great deal of comment, this law.
Well, it
No.
did, but the
Oh, from the usual suspects,
Oh,
of
yeah.
course.
I was
you
just
know.
Hang them
about to
and
say-
flog them, suspects.
I was just about to say, but I think we've laboured on that enough.
Hanging,
Get
flogging,
it?
and
Tory,
smacking.
Labour, one and the same thing. So, I mean, that wasn't what was jumping out at me there. That
Oh.
the issue of the WASPy women
Yes.
is obviously
Being robbed.
Big, take away from that. And there was no pun intended when I said takeaway, because this is absolutely horrendous. It's the UK government saying we recognise that we've done it, but we don't bloody care.
That's right, we don't care whether
Like, we
we're...
don't care. You know what I mean? It means it's not coming out of our pockets, and you know how
Well,
dare
many
you?
people would have planned their retirement parties, and their businesses would have been ready to let them go.
Yes.
And then suddenly they've got to keep working.
Uh-huh,
And of course,
you know, and it's, to be honest with you, it's just yet another big Tory cock up.
Yeah.
That they've thought that they could sneak under the carpet and nobody would raise an eyebrow about it.
Yeah,
And you know, and again, it leads me to believe, why are, you know, if people are so incensed about this, and rightly so, they
Yes,
should be,
yes.
not just the people that are affected, but the partners of those affected as well.
I
the
was just
children
going
and
to say
grandchildren.
that. One of my favourite people, because he does the most invaluable job on my farm, drainage, ditches. And that's a real skill. Now, Alan is absolutely brilliant at it. And he was threatening to retire last year or the year before. But his wife's one of the WASPy women.
Yeah.
And so now he
And
can't
so
retire.
he can't retire. He's got to work on, which
To make up
I mean,
the
I'm
lost money that-
grateful that he's still coming because there's nobody to replace him. But it's so sad for them.
Well, it's one of the issues, I think, with raising the pension age generally is that you have people doing kind of quite really physical jobs like
Yes,
that.
yes.
Well into
Nursing.
their 60s,
Yeah.
moving towards 70. You know,
Yeah.
it's there are
My daughter was telling me that in her department there is a nurse there and she is in her 70s.
And I mean, there are some people who are fit and healthy and who would.
Well, she's not
who
really
would-
capable,
who
apparently.
would not do anything not to retire. But there are so many people, and especially in the hard physical jobs that are the ones that poorer people tend to do,
Yeah.
who can't afford to give up.
The
Yes,
nurses, the
yes.
cleaners, the
Those
the
jobs,
carers.
I think,
Yeah.
do keep still doing those, you know,
Well-
scrubbing toilets and
Oh,
scrubbing
yeah.
floors until you're 70 years
Yeah,
old.
yeah.
I think is really asking a lot.
And this is the 21st century. We're supposed to have been past this,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of point.
And we're
years
the
ago.
lowest pension in Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yes,
It's a joke, I mean-
That's the other thing. And Boris is talking about putting the age up to 75.
75,
Well, you know, up here,
There was
most
a
of people...
There was a standard joke years ago, I remember it from my childhood, our Willie, and they were all in the class, Soapy and Fat Bob and all the rest of it, and the teacher said, what do you want to do? And Willie put his hand up right away, he said, I want to be a lollipop man. I said, why is that? He says, well, you don't start that job until you're 65. Do you know what I mean? That was, you know, that was the mantra during
Yeah.
during that era of, you know, that's what
65,
you done when
you
you were
stop.
65.
Yeah.
Now when you're 65, you're forced to go out and get a job in B&Q or McDonald's.
Yeah.
Well, you're lucky if you get a job there.
Yeah, well.
Well,
But you see a lot of
know,
older gentlemen, particularly outside supermarkets, pushing
Pushing
long
trolleys.
lines
Yeah.
of trolleys.
Yes.
And you think this
They're
man
still
should have
doing
his feet up by the
manual
fire.
labour. They're still doing manual labour, and as Kenny points out, there are people who are physically fit. in
Well,
order
some
to do
people
that.
who are
Some
highly
people are
skilled
not.
don't want to stop working.
No.
They
Yeah.
would perhaps not benefit from retirement, but it's not for everybody, but like you say,
But I
if
think
you're
everybody should have the option
Yes.
at a
you
certain
should,
age. It's,
you should be
that's just
allowed
decent.
to choose. I think. at
Well,
that
have a
point.
look at the old codgers that are 85 plus that are sleeping down in the House of Lords. How
Well,
are
that's
they
not,
still
Well,
allowed to
that's
be
not
there?
Yeah,
work. That's a £300 a day sleeping allowance. There you go.
That's classed as work.
What do you make of the demonstrations that appear to have sprung up everywhere across the globe in the last few months? I mean, we've been talking about Chile, Catalonia, Hong Kong, and now I think there's Bolivia as well, and Lebanon. And the ironic thing, as I said in this story, is that Lebanon was the one place where the protests seemed to be met peacefully and were not being
Let me ask
ruthlessly
you,
repressed.
Let me ask you a common thread in all these peaceful marches
Yeah.
and protests. What is a common thread through it all?
Well, what they're all looking for is democracy, usually.
Yeah, but
Fair
they're
treatment.
fighting. They are fighting the right wing
Yeah.
of those countries, right? So you have to say for every yin there's a yang. Those people out in protest, they're obviously clear lefties. Do you know what I mean? There's socialism there,
Well, there's
at the
Chile,
core of it.
Bolivia, Venezuela.
Exactly.
I mean, all of these things.
Oh, don't mention Venezuela.
No,
Oh my God.
But in places like Chile and Venezuela, is the influence not coming from America?
Yes,
So
a lot.
they've-
influence
the right
is
wing.
coming from America. Yeah, but again, if you-
Singapore,
yeah, but if you only look at last week when
Hong
we were
Kong as
discussing,
well.
Britain, Australia, and America all having right-wing dictators in charge of the right-wing government, allegedly. I'll
Yep.
just put that in for you, Kenny. But that the common thread here, and even if you look at China,
Fighting authoritarianism.
it's people who are fighting against authoritarianism
Yeah.
and establishment.
But
Yeah.
you'll notice that in the protests in Hong Kong, particularly, there was a large element of British interference and British backing in some of the protests and in some of the staged television excerpts that they
Yeah.
showed. And it's also believed that there's quite a heavy element of American backing for some parts of that particular protest because it's pushing back
Against China.
China, which
China.
is a policy of
What
Donald
you're
Trump's.
alluding to there, Gordon,
the more-
other countries interfering in other countries' business.
yeah, I think
It's a bit much, that.
Terrible.
I think what's interesting about the Lebanon one is that the protesters there. I mean, they've benefited from a government that hasn't immediately tried to clamp down hard, but the movement itself has made very specific efforts to try and keep the peace. So at protests, they'll take children.
I think the
They'll have entertainment. They'll have
Right.
musicians and whatnot, so that it becomes something where the police
Have to think.
have to kind of look at it and go, is that something I need to step in at? If there's a little disturbance, they kind of go, well, I don't want to get involved because I don't want to have to shoot kids.
yes.
And not that it's not like a human shield thing. It's just everybody's a lot more kind of calm
Relaxed.
Yeah,
if there are kids around. And I think as well there has been a lot of leadership from women, which again makes a big difference
Yes.
to how any organisation
Well,
does what it does.
Remember, the Lebanese protesters will have learned the lessons of the Arab Spring because Tunisia began the Arab Spring. Tunisia had a largely peaceful transition because they did it right. Like you say, they brought their families out onto the streets and pets and old people, and everybody was out. But again, primarily being pushed along by women because women had been repressed for many years in some of these societies. Lebanon is a far more cosmopolitan country than we imagine. It used to be the kind of
Kind of Riviera.
the Riviera of North Africa, and it was full of Western influences, Eastern influences, a real melting pot. But people who live there, I think, value the peace too much now. They've seen a limited warfare recently when Israel, their clash, I think, with was it Syria? I can't remember, but there was a brief clash with Israeli forces which spilled over into Lebanon for a while. They know the risks in Lebanon of things escalating.
Again, you only have to look at the Lebanon back, in the late 70s, and you see the destabilisation that went on there, and the fact that the people who were fueling that
Yep.
were the right-wing governments from outside of that country.
Well, there
Do you
are
know what I
so
mean?
many actors in the Middle East,
yeah.
all chipping into different battles.
You
Okay.
know, and it's a subject that you could talk about for, you know, Edith and item, you know, with regards
What
to
about the good
arms
protests in
trade and
Edinburgh?
stuff like that. Let's move on to the other
There is
protests
that one,
in Edinburgh.
yes.
Well,
I mean,
just to leave October on a high note.
No guns involved.
No guns at all? No.
and
Lots of flags.
A huge turnout, really incredible. Broadcasting Scotland was backstage. We got a number of really good interviews backstage. It meant, unfortunately, we couldn't participate in the march. But even just seeing the people streaming in to the park, and that was knowing that quite a lot of people didn't stay for the rally because the weather was so bad. It was something quite spectacular, and I had one of my favourite moments of my whole time involved in the independence movement was getting three women.
Choose your words carefully.
I'm choosing my words a lot more carefully.
Ladies,
Who woman?
Who saw me? I was just trying to buy a drink, and they said, "Oh, Kenny, we watch you every night on Broadcasting Scotland." So that was a real kind of
You got
thrill for me.
recognised,
That was
Kenny.
great. So if you're watching, ladies, hello, how are you? We've run into them at a couple of events,
Did you sign
and
autographs?
it's just really cool to know that there are real people who watch Broadcasting Scotland.
Yeah.
Regularly
So it's not just our families,
and enjoy
then?
the shows. Yeah, that's it. It's not just our friends and families. Yeah. So that was just a really great day, I felt.
The other thing on that march as well is, you know, the participants, but the people who line the streets along the way as
They
well.
they participate too. That's
Yes.
the point of it.
Aye,
And they're hanging
aye,
out of
but,
windows with flags
you know,
as well.
According to Manky Jacket Man, they're not counted
Donaghy.
in the Mr. McConaughey.
McConaughey.
They're not counted in the overall figure. You know, because his calculator only goes up to about 300 anyway. So you know, but you know, it's well to say that it's so inclusive of, you know, I mean,
It's
dogs.
it's the nearest thing.
Dogs are plenty,
you know
and
what?
they're all festooned, and you know, wee bits of tartan, wee bits of saltire, wee bits of SNP, yada yada yada. But it's the motivation from. I mean, there's one guy that I've got to put a personal shout out to, a guy called John Love, way over in Dunfermline way. And he organised half a dozen coaches.
Gosh.
Do you know? I mean, you know, yes, Eastwood organised one coach.
One of the-
You know, and then I met up with John Love, and he's like, "I organised 6 coaches." And I'm like, "John, you're
do you
just
not
a legend."
agree that I mean, London can have its pageantry and its trooping of the colour and its state coaches and all of that rubbish with the
Aye.
bearskin hats,
Aye.
all of that. I'd trade all of that for a march like that went through Edinburgh every single year to mark
aye,
Independence Day.
aye. But see, this is
That-
my
that's our
argument.
pageantry.
This is my argument to Manky Jacket Man, right? If he's watching, if you can amass at least half of that number that marched through Edinburgh,
Then you'd have a
I
respect.
would maybe say that you've got a bit of an argument,
Yeah.
and you know, we can take your points on board.
Yeah.
But if you continually turn up with 40 or 50 folk, paying them £20 a skull to, you know,
Many of whom have been paid
raffle the
Allegedly.
to wear a flag.
raffle the butcher's apron, then mate,
Yeah.
to be honest
Yeah.
with you, you've not got a ice cream's chance in hell.
Well, just before we move on to November, I do just want to give a wee shout out to John Finney, MSP, who led the charge on the smacking.
Do you want to give me a
issue.
smack
Oh,
for
yes.
forgetting?
So he's due to stand down as an MSP at the next election.
Oh, is
and
he?
This is it's something that he's fought for a while. So all credit,
John Finney's
all
a
credit to
very
John for
decent
that.
politician
Yeah.
as well. I had early on in the independence campaign back in 2013, 2014. I had a lot of interaction with John Finney.
Yeah.
He was a former SNP member before he
Yeah,
became
yes,
independent.
yeah.
Yeah, left over the
I
NATO
think
issue.
I think we'll see quite a few MSPs standing down in the 2021 elections, and we might see some new blood
No
come
doubt.
into the actual parliament.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm talking about all parties. I'm not
Good.
singling any one party out. You know, but I did hear the disturbing thing today that Labour have finally settled on their deputy leader.
Oh,
Oh,
no.
no.
Goodness, who?
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Certain MSP from Western Bartonshire.
No.
Miss Bailey?
Yes.
Oh, goodness.
Jackie?
Okay. Well, on that
Jackie's back.
on that cheerful note, let's move on to November.
Thank you.
Um,
Change the subject.
In November, the general election campaign began. Labour proposed their most radical manifesto since Michael Foot's in 1983. The SNP stood on a commitment to stop Brexit and to assert Scotland's right to decide its own future, and the Tories promised to get Brexit done. At the same time, the Metropolitan Police sent a report to the Crown Prosecution Service regarding unlawful activity by the Leave campaign in the 2016 Brexit referendum. In the US, impeachment proceedings began against Donald Trump over his withholding of military aid to Ukraine to encourage the country to investigate alleged corruption regarding Joe Biden's son working at a Ukrainian energy company. Opinion in the US on impeachment has remained sharply divided on partisan lines. In Hong Kong's district elections, which are the only truly free elections the province has, pro-democracy candidates won an overwhelming victory, increasing pressure on China to allow reforms to protect and enhance Hong Kong's freedoms. Scotland received a European arrest warrant for Professor Clara Ponsati regarding her involvement in the Catalan independence referendum in 2017. She's vowed to fight the extradition since a fair trial in Spain seems highly unlikely. Prince Andrew, who we mentioned earlier, was effectively sacked from his public duties following a devastating interview with Emily Maitlis about his links with the notorious paedophile and procurer of victims for others, Jeffrey Epstein. In a move unique to royalty, losing his job will not affect his income or his standard of living one iota. And Nicola Sturgeon addressed the IndyRef 2020 rally in George Square. This was the first pro-independence rally the First Minister has attended since 2014. So what jumps out at you there?
Again, there's a lot to.
I mean, I'm sure we'll
jump out.
talk more about the election in December, so we could maybe, unless there's
I think
something
it's-
big about the campaign.
I think it's
to mention.
again, I remember having a conversation with yourself back in November.
We've had a
about
lot of
Trump.
good conversations.
We
Chris.
have. But I mean, you're far more knowledgeable on American politics and stuff like that than what I am. And any time that I know I'm coming in with you, I need to do my homework. But yeah, I didn't. I predicted that Trump would slip out of this some way, and you know, I didn't think in the here and now that he would, you know, that they would have been so successful to just even bring the impeachment.
Knowing Donald Trump, he will make an announcement that he's withdrawing from the impeachment process.
Yeah.
Because that's the kind of thing he does. He would just
Yes.
make up a way of getting out of it.
Something
and
like that
have
will
everybody
happen, but-
forced to accept it.
But the actual fact that they were successful in bringing it, I thought he would have done something. He would have some Machiavellian
Well-
tool in order to, you know, sort of like try and avoid it.
It was pointed out to me recently, and then again just now in my ear, that Donald Trump may not have such an easy time in the Senate, because the Senate, although it is predominantly Republican, his party controlled, there's only a majority of 2 seats,
Yeah.
which
Oh.
means that if
Well,
there's a swing of 4%,
No,
but it's got to be, I know it's got to be 2/3.
you need a 2/3 majority in order
But-
to remove him from office.
But even so, if it was that bad, there might well be some in his own party who do want to get rid of him.
But then,
Despite
you know,
what the
I
news
think
media
that,
says.
Trump wanted to avoid being in auspicious company of Nixon and.
Well, of course, they all jumped before
I
they
think
were
it was Andrew
Yes,
Johnson.
aye, but they were, but they were impeached.
Yes,
yeah.
and then they
You're
then
impeached,
they
yeah.
resigned.
So it's this
But they were not
exclusive elite club that
Yeah,
Trump
it's
didn't
only-
want, you know, because he made that big rant the other day there about they're cheapening the word impeachment and they're blowing it. How can you cheapen the word of impeachment?
Just by
Impeachment is
using it against
impeachment.
me, they've made it cheap.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense at
anything
all,
with
does
Trump's name attached to it looks vaguely expensive, but is actually cheap once you scratch the
it?
surface.
Donald Trump's basically saying that he has cheapened it himself.
He has cheapened it himself. Aye,
Well,
correct.
I mean, he's cheapened the office of the president, so it's hardly
I always remember
surprising.
Dolly
Again,
Parton
that's a
once
very
said
correct
it
statement.
costs
Cheapen the
a
process.
lot of money to look this cheap.
Aye.
And I think that's Donald Trump in a nutshell.
Aye,
So-
without a doubt.
So also, we did talk a wee bit about Prince Andrew earlier, but I'm sure, Chris, you've got something to say about the fact that now, having been removed from public duties, he gets
He's still paid.
exactly the same income and exactly the same castles to live in,
Yeah,
but he doesn't
yeah.
have to do a lick
And
of
he's
work
got
for
the
it.
exact same access to vehicles, whether that be land, air,
His mummy
or
said he's
sea.
not to play with those people
He's
anymore.
well, this is true, but he can still jump in a private jet.
Jet off wherever he wants.
Jet off to wherever he wants. He can enjoy the lavish lifestyle. He can still attend the socialite parties. The higher echelons of the
Society.
monarchy
He
do.
just doesn't have to
he
deal
just
with
doesn't
any
have
dirty
to-
work like
doesn't
patronising
have-
charities.
He doesn't have to lift a pen. He doesn't have to write.
Doesn't have to cut a ribbon.
So there, hey ho, food banks are safe. Thank God for that. But then so he would be doing away with his personal entourage.
There'll be a lot of people in hospital thanking God that he's not going to come and visit them.
Yeah, but these people have got their personal secretaries to pay. They've got their grounds people to pay. What am I having? The grounds people will all still be there. The gardens will still need tended.
Oh, aye.
Do you know what I mean? But the royal family, Prince Charles alluded to something that I was quite interested in. That's the reason why I'm pointing it out, folks, is the fact that he wanted to trim the family
family,
down
The civil list.
in time.
Yeah.
In time. Probably after Mummy has popped her mortal coil right enough, because she would never stand for it.
Yeah.
But all throughout this is the fact that Prince Andrew, although he's been removed from duty, but still remains in the
household,
royal
yeah.
family. Was this not done when somebody had to abdicate?
No,
No.
he was pitched out.
Yeah, but did
But
they
I-
not retain?
Well, I think he
not
still
retain a certain
retained
amount of.
I think he still retained an income.
Oh,
He
yeah.
still retained an income, and I think he still.
Well, they
still-
call it
still-
gardening leave in the upper echelons of business.
Yeah.
You're no
Gardening
longer
leave.
wanted on the board of directors, so you're sent on so-called gardening leave, which is basically
Just paid to sit at
biding
home.
your time
Yeah.
until you retire,
Uh-huh,
but
aye.
not working.
Aye, but the other question for me was, I mean, Prince Andrew's ex-wife, how's she's been? How's she been trundling along?
Jeffrey
Well,
Epstein
I think as the
Of course,
funded her.
allegedly.
I think as the mother
Allegedly.
of princesses, you're kind of automatically
So you're
grandfathered in.
yeah, and you're automatically invoiced in as well.
Yep.
For signing these
Well,
said children of grandeur.
God knows, I think, I mean, well, no, I was about to say something about how you might want to get paid to have sex with Prince Andrew, but given the
Let's
context of
not
the
go
story,
down
given the context of the story,
This
that's
terrible
probably
habit of
exactly the wrong
planting
thing to
horrible
say. Yeah,
pictures
that's,
in my mind.
Can
that
I,
was
can
not
I
what I meant
pick
to say.
one?
Yes, you can.
Say it, sure.
Sorry,
Please.
One of the
Please.
things that really irritates me is the turgid movement on some sort of prosecution or action on electoral fraud that has gone on.
Oh yeah.
And it's a bit like the child.
Yes. Police investigate, but
Yeah,
they never actually
and
prosecute
nothing
anyone.
seems to happen, and
Yeah.
it gets buried and
It's been
pushed to the
such a long
side.
process. I mean, that's
Yeah.
3.5 years since the Leave campaign won its victory,
Yes.
and we're just finally seeing the reports go into the CPS. I mean, it's possible that we could have already left the EU before we got to dealing with the criminality of the campaign.
Yeah.
Aye, but it's well to underline that, and you know, and very, very heavy pen, because yes, we are talking about 2015
Yeah.
as recent as what, 3 weeks ago. Laura Kuenssberg
Yes.
was caught discussing postal votes
Yes.
in a car.
But not
Yes.
only that,
Which that whole clip has disappeared from the BBC
Well,
Broadcasting
but
Corporation.
she also
Happily still on my Twitter feed, folks.
Okay.
So,
she also implied that both parties knew the content of the postal vote.
yeah,
Well.
but what I'm saying
And she
is
said
the
that was
fact
normal.
that
That
Kenny's
was the
saying that this
implication.
is from 3 years ago that
Aye.
we're discussing
Yeah.
now. So this will never come to light
But-
until
things
2023.
But
always-
even if the Electoral Commission rules and says that they're guilty, the most that will happen is they'll get fined
Yeah.
Yeah.
retrospectively, but the result will stand.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's-
yeah.
And
Those are-
that's
those
the
are
criminal
costs.
part of it. in
Yeah,
my
Those are
view.
costs that the Brexiteers can
Yes.
well afford. Just
And the-
finally,
You're quite right.
before we
I agree
move on,
entirely.
sorry,
Very
sorry,
quickly, interrupt you there. What followed on from, well, didn't follow on, but the Scottish Government referendum bill includes clauses which ought to prevent that sort of thing.
Yes, they're very strict.
Yeah.
About
yeah,
So
transparency.
again, Scottish Government is leading on trying to do things correctly.
They've increased the fine to £500,000.
Yes.
Pounds,
Yeah.
I understand,
Yeah.
for
Yes.
electoral fraud.
Yes.
Now that's a big
Disincentive.
deterrent. Big
And I
deterrent.
hope there are I hope there's jail time as well.
Well,
to be
they're
honest.
also
I
saying
think
that
if
they
if
can
you mess with
prosecute
democracy, I think that's a
individuals.
major
Uh-huh.
that's a major issue.
Did you read any part of the legislation?
Sorry, you can-
the
Some of
the
it.
bit I read of the bill dealing with referendums included up to £500,000 fine
And that's
for
per individual.
individuals.
Yes.
It
That-
is not
yeah.
per party.
Per organisation.
And
Well, that
will
could
really
be that
deter
could be
them.
quite a
Yeah.
quite a
And
disincentive.
this
thing.
is also going to be exacerbated if Boris gets his way by introducing people having to use photographic ID in order
Oh,
to
yes.
vote.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
The
It's a further-
gerrymandering goes on and on.
It's a further massaging of the whole electoral system.
Yes.
But on a lighter note, I would advocate that we introduce VAR into the British electoral, because if it works for English football, then it should work for English politics. There we
Well,
are.
just quickly
That
before we
comes
go
from
on
a
to
Scottish Liverpool fan.
before we go on to December. Nicola Sturgeon spoke at this rally in George Square. As I said, it was the first rally she's spoken at since 2014. Does this signify a big step up in the Indie campaign?
I think it has to. I think this is the
Yep.
this is the turnaround moment for Nicola as a leader, because up until now, the leadership of the SNP has distanced itself a little bit from the independence movement, the movement on the ground of
Yep.
ordinary people,
Yep.
and most of us know here, at least, that the independence movement is not made up entirely of SNP members. In fact, the majority are not. They're just ordinary people.
Yeah.
And this was the first time that Nicola had addressed them specifically, not just party faithful.
Yeah.
So for her to turn up like that and to lead that event was a significant turning point. And I think it's a signal now that that's chalks away now.
Yeah.
We're going for it now.
Yeah.
And Nicola has now made herself
But
the leader.
can I just make one thing abundantly clear? That you know, Nicola has stayed away from the independence movement, all under one banner, the hope over fear, everything. She's stayed away from it since 2014. She's also stayed away from an awful lot more things as well. You know, I know, being in the trade union group and having a stall at the conference, you know, even although, you know, and I'm not just blowing my own trumpet here, but even although Nicola knows that I'm in the trade union group, as she's passing, she won't come over and say hello, because she doesn't want to be identified with the trade union group. Similarly,
Well, it's
with
because
the
she's a
Friends of
moving
Palestine.
target for the media.
Yeah, that's a very good phrase. Say it loud and clear.
She is a moving target for the British media.
Yes.
Yeah. So you know, she can't just be pinned down to one single
No, she
item.
can't.
Do you know what I mean?
She has to represent everybody.
Yeah. But the one thing that I did want to pick you up in your description there, Gordon, of
By all means.
the Scottish people within the independence campaign as being ordinary people. They're not, folks. They are extraordinary people.
Yeah.
They walk through hail, sun, wind, rain, and shine.
But they call themselves the ordinary.
They are ordinary citizens, but for what
But
they
they're
do
doing something
and
extraordinary.
and for their beliefs, they are
Yeah,
extraordinary people.
Yes.
I entirely
In
take the point.
In my book, they definitely are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'd agree.
Are we moving to December
I
now
think
then?
we are,
All right,
yes.
we're in the closing stages of the year now. December, right, okay,
Oh,
so the
that's fun
biggest
one.
news of December was, of course, the general election result. The SNP had a storming night across Scotland, taking back several Tory and Labour-held seats, as well as dethroning the Liberal UK leader Joe Swinson. That's an interesting phrase that you've used there. Dethroning Joe Swinson in Eastern Bartonshire. Across the UK, though, the Tories won their most convincing victories ever, taking seats in what were thought to be Labour heartlands. The Tory campaign was one of the most dishonest in history, with Boris Johnson avoiding tough interviews like the plague. The BBC lent a hand too, editing the footage to make Johnson look better on at least 3 occasions. I think on one occasion they they deleted some audience laughter at something he'd
that's
said
right.
during a programme.
And also when he was laying a wreath at the cenotaph.
And when he laid his cenotaph wreath upside down as well, yes. They
They also-
handily replaced that with a bit of historic
They also
footage.
punctuated a few pauses in a discussion with Keith Starmer as
That's
well.
right, yes.
Well-
yeah, to make him look, a complete idiot.
And of course, without wanting, to be left out of the last month of the year,
Oh, you can't.
President Trump was finally impeached by the House of Representatives and is expected to face trial in the Senate early next year. He was also humiliated at the NATO summit after the other world leaders were caught on camera mocking him.
Yes.
So, well, I mean, what can you say about this month? The election has to be, I think, the thing that stands out really as
Yeah.
the most important in
Absolutely,
this
Yeah.
month.
Yeah.
And the ripples of that are still being felt now.
Well, they are, and unfortunately, we lost some high-profile.
Yeah,
people.
Stephen
We did.
Gethins.
Stephen Gethins was first and foremost on my mind. Day. Stephen was a wonderful MP, very knowledgeable in Europe.
Yeah.
It's that was just unforeseen. I never
But-
seen that happen. But again, we gathered back into the fold a wealth of talent. I was lucky enough to get Kirsten Oswald back into East Renfrewshire, and Anne McLaughlin was.
Well, I can.
sorry?
I can offer a little bit of what I would say is hearsay evidence about why Jo Swinson lost her seat. She only lost her seat by, I think it was 146 votes. So Amy Callaghan, who's now the MP,
Yeah.
which thank goodness, Amy Callaghan, who won that, won by this fairly very small majority. The reason Jo Swinson apparently didn't get anywhere close to Jo's figure was because she annoyed the local bowling club in Mulgai and Bearsden, who had, in a long-running local argument about a sports facility called the Allender Centre, which is being demolished in preparation for building hundreds of houses. And the developer had promised to build a new sports centre with an indoor bowling surface for them. And unfortunately, the casting vote about this was to be made by a Liberal Democrat councillor. And what do you know? He didn't show up. And so the poor bowlers have lost their entire bowling facility forever because of this one man. And it was they, all 300 of them, who decided to vote against the Liberal Democrats after having been Liberal Democrat stalwarts apparently for years.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
And this comes from a really reliable source the hairdressing salon in our local street. So, but this is what I'm telling, this is a typical story of how things can swing
Yeah, I mean,
at the
amazing.
local level.
It shows when you've got close margins like that, as so
It's
many. I mean,
local
virtually every
things
seat in
that
Scotland
matter.
now is marginal.
I mean, as I was saying about Anne McLaughlin getting back into Glasgow North East, where she shouldn't have been unseated at all. And she'd done an awful lot of hard work on that campaign, and her activists as well. None more so than obviously Councillor Graham Campbell as well. But the fact is that Paul Sweeney had really done quite an awful lot of work for her, and his whole handling of the Calais rail site has complete and utter disregard to engage with any SNP involvement and trying to negotiate, some sort of outcome for the Calais site, which is just going to get completely mothballed. Now, hopefully, and I always speak about the Calais site. My grandfather worked in there. He was a boiler maker, and I don't want to see that going to rack and ruin. I don't want to see it become a car park or a superstore or
so
something
many
like that.
big rail infrastructure buildings and places have just now become, as you say, car parks and supermarkets.
And these are all controlled by Network Rail. They control the infrastructure.
They can sell it.
The English company, you know what I mean, which ScotRail has got no say over whatsoever. So again, now we've got some really good MPs back in, and some really good experience and some new faces, as you say. It's just a pity that we didn't replicate the 56 from 2014.
Did you watch Alan Smith's maiden speech?
Absolutely outstanding. Absolutely outstanding.
And I'm just so thrilled that he's my MP.
Stirling, Stirling, isn't it?
It is Stirling, and with a majority of something like 6,000.
Yeah, got a huge.
Well,
majority.
the bonus was the fact that you got the pantomime dame out. You know what I mean?
Oh, what a bonus!
Oh yeah. I mean, honestly, it looked like a pantomime dame without any makeup.
I just could not understand why my fellow Stirlingites voted that man
Is that what they
in.
call them? Stirlingites?
Well, that's what I'm calling them. But how on earth could they do a thing like that? And yet, my own community voted in as at a local council election somebody we'd never heard of, never seen hide nor hair of, and in the end turned out to be a bigot or something, and refused to go for training.
Of course, Stirling had a number of Tories.
And yet,
I think 2
people
Tories
in my village
suspended.
voted for this man.
Yeah.
Dear Lord.
Dear
Lord. The other thing about Swinson was the fact that she never turned it up for hustings.
No, she was absent from the hustings. She didn't think it was worth turning up to actually talk to her constituents.
Well, she doesn't bother to live in Eastern Bartonshire, so
No. Well, I noticed on the day of the vote, she was the first one to vote at 7 o'clock, and then she quickly jumped on a plane
back home
and went back home down to Bath or something like that to campaign in that constituency. And again, another conversation. It may have been your good self, Kenny, or it could have been you, Gordon. But I was saying, why did they not parachute her into a safe Liberal seat?
Yes.
Well, if she was really going to be the Prime Minister, and she's the leader of the Liberal Democrats, you would have thought that. But obviously the Liberal Democrats themselves were not convinced by her, I think.
I think
but they're a bit late because they voted her as leader when the other guy would have been far better.
When you're talking about Stirling, I think it always reminds me of a comment attributed to William Wallace, and that was, whoever holds Stirling holds Scotland.
That's right.
And I always think
that's interesting.
Yes.
That Stirling was considered to be the bottleneck. It was the cork in the bottle, which stopped English forces from encroaching through central Scotland. And if you held Stirling and Stirling Castle, you could keep them out. And
I mean,
that phrase
it has
lasted.
been a wee bit of a bellwether seat as well. I mean, it was Michael Forsyth up until '97. Then it turned to Labour.
Michael Forsyth was the man who invented the girls' figures.
It turned to that was Ian Lang.
Was it Ian Lang?
Yeah.
Oh, I do beg your pardon. It was Ian Lang.
It went to
Scottish Secretary.
It went to Labour in '97. Then it went to the SNP in 2015.
Labour. That was Anne Maguire, was it?
Yes. Then the Tories for a couple of years, and back to the SNP. Which I mean, it's a fairly simplified way, does reflect the way that Scottish politics generally
Yes.
has
Back and
gone
forth.
over the last
Yes.
the last 30 years or so.
Yes.
Stirling is a mixture of different types
It is.
of people.
It's the perfect, apparently, local authority mix and size. Geographically,
Yeah, 'cause
we've
you've
got
a
everything.
good-sized town
Yeah.
plus
Yep.
a lot of
Yeah.
rural
You've
land.
got a lot of suburban areas and
Yes,
housing,
yes.
new housing developments,
and
and a lot of
universities
rural
and
Yes.
all the rest of it.
and
We're very
rich
lucky.
farming land in the Stirling
Yes,
Valley.
down on the Carses it's
Yep.
rich.
Yeah.
Up on
Yeah.
the hill, but you've got the low ground, the mid ground, and the high ground. So
You've
we've got a bit of
fair
everything.
farming out in East Renfrewshire, I'll have, you know.
You have indeed.
We're
Doesn't
all
quite
born with
compare.
cows shitting
Well,
our ears.
I suggest that maybe we save this for the farming special that we're doing next year. But just before we wrap up, having backwards cast Wareen, we now have to guess and fear what comes in 2020. So I'm going to ask for two things. One, what do you hope is going to happen in 2020? And secondly, what do you worry will happen in 2020? So a guess and a fear. So Dave, what do you
I'm going
think?
to guess that we will get the referendum question out. The fear, obviously, is that we don't win it, and it is a fear. But that's probably my age and my caution, you know. But I fervently hope that we do win it. And from what I'm hearing from people, they're saying, oh, but because my daughter in the hospital, you know, from a few months ago, everybody was saying, oh, I don't know. And she says they're all for it now. The young lad that works for me, in his other works, they were all saying, oh no, we're not, you know, and they've swung from no to yes. So maybe.
Maybe. So Chris, what about you?
Well, conversely to that, I think that if we do get the question granted to us, I think we will win it. My worry is
Good.
the fact that we will not get the question granted to us. I think Boris will play the long game, and out with, as we mentioned earlier on, Joe Monaghan and
Yep.
Joanna Cherry. I think they're going to have to get involved in the courts again.
Yes.
Because you have to take into account the stubbornness of Boris Johnson, and it's hard to see him lifting the phone because Nicola has asked for the Section 30 already, and that bugger has not replied.
He's just stalling just now.
He's stalling at this moment in time. So my burning question, if I could lift the phone to Nicola, is: have you phoned them again, Hen? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Get back on the blower routine.
Well,
Yeah.
And that's going to be a big test for the independence movement, because Nicola did cite late 2020, and as I say,
it takes time.
what you're saying, is that I think an awful lot of people have changed from no to yes.
Yes.
I think if the question is asked and it's asked correctly, and the actual wording of the question should just be: should Scotland determine its own
Yes.
future, or do you want Boris Johnson to determine it for you?
Yeah.
That's it, in a nutshell.
But any later than 2020 is going to damage the economy
Correct.
Well,
in
there
terms
are
of
other
trade.
pressing reasons
Yeah.
as well.
Yes.
Anyway,
correct.
Gordon, you're
So
Thoughts
you
for-
want to know my
what
wish
do you,
for
what do you
next
think?
year?
What do you think is going to happen, and what do you worry might happen?
Well, what I think is going to happen is I think eventually the Section 30 order will be granted for a very simple reason, and that is Boris will not want the rest of Europe breathing down his neck over the fact that he is not allowing Scotland to have a democratic vote. He doesn't want to be fighting on two fronts at once because he's going to be wanting to negotiate with the European Union. He wants a good deal if he can get one, even if it's a stripped out quick deal. He wants it to be favourable. He's not going to get that if he's denying the Scots a binding referendum, which the UK will respect. So I think he will grant it and roll the dice, because Boris, apart from anything else, is a master of self-preservation. Although he doesn't want to be held up as a man who presides over the breakup of the United Kingdom, he might want to be the man who heralds a new era of shall we say, reconciliation with an independent Scotland later on, so that he can then say, well, we did the big thing as we were leaving Europe. We let Scotland have the referendum and they've decided to leave and we're all going to make it work and everybody is happy. He would rather do that than face the wrath of 5.5 million people.
Yeah.
My fear is that he might attach some ridiculous conditions to his giving this Section 30 order. But remember, we don't need a Section 30 order to hold a referendum. I think we all know this.
Yeah.
That a Section 30 order will be perfectly legal. A referendum will be perfectly legal in Scotland as an advisory referendum, as all referendums are advisory. And it is up to Boris Johnson as to whether he will respect the result at the end of it. My fear is that he might not, and as you say, it might roll on into some kind of legal problem with the rest of the United Kingdom. But I think and I feel that the rest of the European Union will invite us straight back in.
Yep.
So just for clarity then, a referendum, an advisory referendum in 2020,
I believe it will happen.
and that'll be dismissed by Boris Johnson, right? We then have it then drags on to 2021 when we have
No, it can't.
no. But hear me out. If it does drag on to 2021 when we have the Parliament elections and we get a further mandate,
Well, remember,
that'll be us sitting on 7 mandates. How many mandates do we need to sit
remember
on?
one thing, that the United Nations is coming to Glasgow at the end of near
Yeah,
the
yeah,
end
yeah,
of,
yeah.
of
2020,
the autumn, November.
Yeah.
And so if we are having a referendum, it needs to be before that.
Oh, yeah.
And all of the people we want to talk to, having won a referendum, will be around us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In
the
Glasgow.
one thing I worry about is that we just won't have enough time. If we do have that legal battle to go through, it's going to be cutting it very fine to get it done before then. That's my one
I
big worry.
honestly believe, even without a Section 30 order, we will vote next year. We'll win it, and I agree with you, Chris, we'll win it handsomely, I think.
Yeah, I think we will.
What then transpires afterwards is a completely blank page. I don't know. If Boris keeps on saying we're not going to respect it, the European Union are not going to respect the UK.
Yes.
And they will lose out big time.
Yeah.
In their negotiations.
I wholly take that on board. But
That's why I
again,
think it's unsustainable. I
Yeah,
think that's why
yeah.
Nicola Sturgeon said that Boris's position would be unsustainable.
But again, you have to countenance the bullish attitude that Boris Johnson does adopt and will adopt, and his bloodied mindedness.
But that's
of-
just politicising. I mean, he's given in on the withdrawal agreement already, hasn't he? He's accepted a lesser withdrawal agreement than Theresa May got.
But the thing is,
So he makes a bluff and bluster, but
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
you know,
well, I agree with you, Day. I think he makes a lot of bluff and bluster, but Scotland can easily out-bluster him.
oh yeah,
Because
calmly
if we
so.
have our votes, we also still have to keep marching
Yeah.
in
Oh, yeah.
greater and greater numbers, because the more people we throw out on the streets, more ordinary, everyday, normal people out on the streets,
Extraordinary.
the more it shows everybody else on the planet
Yep.
that Scotland is behind this, and that we have voted yes by that time. They cannot gainsay it.
Yeah.
On that note, in 2 weeks, Broadcasting Scotland will be at the march, the All Under One Banner March in Glasgow. We hope to see you all there. I'm sure that's going to be a very, very big one. So that's happening on January the 11th, and we look forward to seeing you then. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us for this surprisingly long discussion of the second half of the year. It's been
a long year.
It has been a pleasure to be a part of the shows all through this year. To have presented shows with Day, with Chris, and Gordon. I've only managed to do these two and the election
That's right.
coverage.
You and I
Those are the only ones we've ever been on
Big
screen
ships
together.
passing in the night.
Absolutely. So this has actually been a great pleasure for that reason. I've got to work with Gordon. But it's also been great just to be a part of your lives. Like I said, meeting people who watch Broadcasting Scotland is a real thrill. And I hope that if you run into us at the march in Glasgow on the 11th, you will come and say hello, because it's such a thrill meeting you. Thank you to everybody who has donated through the year as well. We mentioned this on the Full Scottish yesterday, but we have met our fundraising, our crowdfunder target. But every penny we can get makes a big difference. There's so much more we want to do, so much more we can do if you're able to support us. So do please, if you can, go to broadcastingscotland.scot/donate. We have a lot of goals, a lot of ambitions for this channel. And if you want to sign up, £5 a month is not a lot. It's less than you would pay for a licence fee, and I know a lot of you have cancelled your licence fees at some point recently.
Cancel your BBC licence fee and spend it on us.
Exactly.
Give us your money.
Give up one pint in a West End pub.
Allegedly. I had the word allegedly to that.
You just don't know what West End pubs are like, is that it? But anyway, that is all we've got time for. Thank you once again today to Chris. Thank you to Gordon. Thank you to everybody behind the scenes here as well. There's quite a wee team, and they've all worked very hard all year to bring you these shows. So thank you to everyone, especially obviously to Linda, our founder, our producer, director, camera woman, general dog's body. There is literally nothing that Linda doesn't do apart from be on screen.
She's an extraordinary woman.
Yes,
and makes a fine pot of soup on a Sunday as well.
Yes.
So thank you to everybody who has participated. Thank you especially, as I say, to everyone who's donated in the last few weeks during this crowdfunder. You've made it possible for Broadcasting Scotland to keep going, and that means the world to all of us. So thank you once again. As we hope you had a wonderful Christmas. We hope you have a great new year when it comes, and we will see you in 2020. It is almost the 2020s, folks. Yikes. I saw somebody on Facebook saying, it's amazing, the year 2000 was 20 years ago, which is amazing, because 1980 was also 20 years ago,
Yes.
Which is kind of how I feel. But that is all we've got time for tonight. Thank you once again. We will see you next year. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Hello, Scotland!
I've been a member of the SNP since 1974. There are many good reasons for independence. And if only we'd chosen it in 2014, we wouldn't be in this mess now. But we've got a second chance. We've got the chance to move forward, and we need to take that chance now.
I'm here today because somebody I know and love converted me to the cause of Scottish independence. It wasn't because of anything I read in a newspaper. It wasn't because of anything that I saw on the television. It was because somebody that I know and love explained to me why it was so important that Scotland becomes independent.
Make sure every one of yous have got hope in your heart. Make sure every one of yous look towards the Unionists and don't hate. We are not about hate. We're about love. Let's bring power back where it belongs to the men and, more importantly, the women of Scotland. Thanks for listening.
You're watching the television screen and the result is announced that Scotland has voted to become an independent country.
We are gathered here for one simple purpose, and that purpose is to demand the right to choose a better future for our country. We are gathered here to demand the right to choose an independent future for Scotland.